everyone, and welcome back to Behind the Screen. Today we have a very special guest who has just produced and directed her very first film called Wraithwood. So, Kitty, I think the plan for today is I'm going to split it into 3 sections. I'm going to ask you about research and planning skills, production skills, and post-production skills. But to begin, I'd like you to tell me all about Wraithwood.
Hello to you all, and thanks so much, Alessia, for giving me the opportunity to be here today to tell you all about my new film. So Wraithwood, to sum it up in short, is a whirlwind of adventure when a group of 4 explore different areas and locations whilst catching it all on film for their viewers to watch. It taps into fear of the unseen, loss of control, and has a huge psychological aspect towards it with the breakdown of the characters. It's enticing, bewitching, and will definitely keep the audience on the edge of their seats.
Wow, that sounds incredible. I'll be giving it a watch for sure. Now, how did this whole idea come to light through your research and planning? I mean, was there anything you learnt or picked up on the way, perhaps anything you wouldn't do again?
Great question. I would definitely say I've developed in and also gained a bunch of new skills throughout the planning process. For example, the first task I set myself was to figure out what genre I wanted to do. I was already leaning more towards horror before I started this research, but comedy came a close second as I thought it would be a whole lot more upbeat and perhaps even more entertaining to film. However, giving it more thought, I decided this would be difficult to make comedic in such a short amount of time. Sci-fi and action were also out of the picture, as we are, of course, a small independent company who doesn't spend a lot of money on production. Moving on to romance, I also thought this would be a bit of a challenge, and it wouldn't get the audience as invested as a horror film would. So my answer was final, horror all the way. I'd also like to mention my research into similar films. I looked at many films such as The Borderlands and The Blair Witch Project. Both of these films came of great interest to me and made me realise that I wanted to make a film based on the more supernatural side with a mockumentary feel to it.
So you're insinuating you were made for horror films, or perhaps horror films were made for you? Anyways, anything else in the planning stage?
Of course. I'd also like to mention my storyboards. Over the period, I put together 3 separate storyboards which got more defined and clear as the process moved along. To start off with, I made 12 narrative points of action, outlining what I was going to draw and what actually happens throughout. For the second and the third, it was along the same lines, but included much more detail with both the drawings themselves, but also with what was going on in each one. This was highly useful as it gave me a new way of communication with the rest of my group or team to visually show them what I wanted our film to look like.
Seems like you were very efficient in this whole process, picking up various skills as well as developing them. The location your film was set in looked incredible. Please let us all know how on earth did you find it?
Oh yeah, the location was what I had envisioned to a T. However, the research behind finding a place like this was not for the weak, I must say. I started off by asking my great friend Google for creepy locations near me to really just get a feel for what was accessible and also fitting for our film. To my surprise, I found that most places were, quote, creepy, were either found in America or had been shut down years ago, which brought my ambitions down by an awful amount. So, with Google providing me with little to no hope, I went to the next best source, my mum. She's from around here, so she knows everything about everything. After asking her if there were any locations she thought would suit my idea well, she gave me 3 suggestions: Paynes Hill and Cobham, Chilworth Gunpowder Mills, and Bedham Church. Paynes Hill was my top choice initially, but after realising you had to pay a £12.50 entry fee each, I decided to put more motion towards Bedham. I took a lot of time researching about the location, seeing whether it was free for the public or privately owned and whereabouts it was. The church was absolutely perfect, along with the creepy log, which we only discovered on the day of our shoot. The skills I developed from this were definitely problem solving, as I managed to take into consideration various factors that may affect our film, such as the weather, noise and lighting. And I also developed planning and organisation skills, which helped me throughout the rest of the process, such as getting permission to film there, how we were going to get there, and overall scheduling.
Right, I see. So it seems like you nailed research and planning for your film Wraithwood. Now, what we all want to know, tell me about your production process and the journey you had to take to get there.
Great question. Initially, I had not a clue in the world how to even work a camera before I started this project. To help conquer my fear of the unknown, we had a solid week of camera workshops hosted by the one and only Matt. We learned various different techniques and skills, such as learning how to set up a tripod and also just how to work a camera. Well, a Blackmagic camera for any tech geeks out there. He taught us tips and showed us features such as different lighting settings when filming indoors and outdoors, as well as zooming in and out. My group and I made a mini sequence to test things out for ourselves. Through teaching us about the 180 rule and also his top tip of making the main character or object be placed on either the left-hand side or the right to give the shot more dimension. Our film would have never been created if I hadn't been to these workshops, as they taught me the foundation for everything I used and will continue to use today. So, cheers, Matt.
Sounds like Matt as a star and played a significant role towards helping you achieve your aspirations of making a film. Can you now tell me about the infamous shoot day itself and how it all panned out?
Absolutely, I can. So, with my new camera skills in one hand and my optimism in the other, my team and I headed down to Bedham to film our sequence. The day panned out well, but I must say, if I could go back in time and do anything differently, I wouldn't have spent as much time on the first half of our film, as we left not enough time to film the end. However, on a more positive note, we incorporated multiple angles, shot types, and transitions. My favourite, by far, being the focus pull we used, when the shot started on our stick ornaments, handmade by the way, and panned down to the cohort walking around the church with the help of a light panel which put more emphasis on the ornaments. I will let you in on a secret though, so let's just keep it between me and you. The script was actually 100% improv, which worked out just perfectly, as it gave the actors a chance to feel more connected to the audience. In summary, the whole day was an eye-opening experience as I got a full insight into what it's actually like to shoot a film. I developed such important skills such as time management, directing and communicating efficiently, and I also gained more camera skills which will stick by me for a very long time.
Well, by the sounds of it, it seems like everything went according to plan and that the shoot day had a drastic impact on your skill development. I won't keep you here for much longer, so I've just got one last thing to ask you about your post-production process. So, how was it? Enlighten me.
I will do just that. After shooting our film, we took to the editing suite, where we started by taking a look at everything we had gathered on the day of our shoot. This was a long but necessary process, and in the end, we were left with just the important shots we needed. The following task of putting the clips together, cutting them, and making sure everything was up to standard didn't take too long, but what we were then left to focus on was how we were going to incorporate the videos taken on iPhone into our film, and additionally make them look like an Instagram Live, as that is, obviously, everything our film's centred from. To begin with, we looked at templates online of Instagram Live, stupidly thinking we could just copy and paste one onto the videos, but this was a bold assumption as it ended up fitting incorrectly and looking awfully tacky. So instead we opted to finding small icons that would usually be seen on an Instagram Live and added them onto the video, which looked much better. Our whole film was edited on Adobe Premiere Pro, where we also got most of our sound effects from. We focused on unsettling, creepy sounds which got louder until we stopped them completely. For the very end, which I may go so far as to say the finale, we asked Layla, one of our cast members, to scream, which we then recorded and put over the title of our film. For the titles themselves, we looked on various font websites such as DaFont, but ended up going back to Adobe to use their fonts as they had a lot on offer, and after a screeniest amount of scrolling, we found the perfect match. I think the best part of my post-production was getting my group and I back together to film a few videos and interviews, evaluating how we all thought everything went, and also talking about mise en scène. These are actually available on YouTube, so feel free to watch them if you're interested. But it was really nice to see how everyone felt. That being, we were all very happy with what we had produced, and also to be reassured that we were all on the same page. It was also useful to give an in-depth analysis of the technical aspect towards our film, talking about topics like costume, characters, proxemics, and more. Anyway, I won't babble on much longer, but I just wanted to highlight how I think my skills have developed throughout this entire making of our film. Not only have I gained greater understanding on editing techniques and software proficiency, I've also gained more control and rationality with decision making via choosing how to edit something or change something, and also narrative structure. This is because I learned how to create tension or cause the audience to feel the way I wanted them to, not through manipulation, well, kinda, but editing and additional features such as a soundtrack and slower paced editing.
Well, Kitty, I must say it's been an absolute delight to have you come in and speak for Behind the Screen today. It sounds like the movie has benefited you a great deal as you have picked up a huge variety of new skills. One last thing, are you planning on making any more films for us in your upcoming career?
Well, I guess you'll find that out at a later date.
Okay, well, Kitty, it's been great.
Thanks so much, Alessia. I've had a blast.
Yes, me too. And thanks to everyone who's turned in to hear about the BT8th of Wraithwood. I hope you've all had a great time too. Thanks.